I used to laugh at people who said ghosts were real. Honestly, I thought they watched too many movies or just wanted a bit of attention. That was before we moved into the Sally house. It was 1993. My wife Deb and I had just had our first baby, Taylor. We needed more space, and the little house on 2nd Street in Atchison seemed perfect. It even had a nursery already set up. Warm, cozy, just the right price. The first few weeks were uneventful. The house creaked like any old home, and I didn't think much of the cold spots or flickering lights. That is, until our dog started acting strange. He'd growl at empty corners of the room, bark like crazy at the staircase. Once I found him whining in the kitchen, tail between his legs, refusing to go near the nursery. Then things started happening to Deb. She told me she kept hearing a girl's voice over the baby monitor. Not crying, singing, humming a lullaby we didn't recognize. At first I thought maybe it was picking up interference from a neighbor's baby monitor or something. But then Deb said she saw her. A little girl, standing in the nursery, wearing an old-fashioned dress, hair tied with blue ribbons, pale skin, wide, empty eyes. Deb turned around for just a second and the girl vanished. We still tried to explain it away, stress, sleepless nights, but, that didn't last long. One evening I was in the nursery adjusting the mobile. Something cold touched my back like a hand. I spun around. There was nothing there. But when I lifted my shirt, 3 long scratches ran down my shoulder blades, red and raw, like they'd been made by claws. That was the first time I felt real fear in that house. After that, the activity, it escalated. Lights started turning off by themselves. Objects would just move around. I remember once, I left a coffee mug on the kitchen counter, and honestly, I watched it slide across the surface on its own. Phones would ring, but there was no one on the other end. And toys, they'd turn on in the middle of the night, just out of nowhere. And then, the burns started. I'd wake up with handprints on my body. Not bruises, burns. Like as if someone had pressed their hand into my skin and just held it there. Deb actually saw it happen once. She screamed and pointed to my back. I looked in the mirror and I watched 5 blistered fingers slowly rise out of my skin, like they were being branded onto me. We ended up inviting a psychic to investigate that. She walked in and straight away turned pale. She said, "There's something pretending to be a little girl. It's using that image to get close to you. But it's not a child, it never was." She told us about the legend, that the house had once been occupied by a doctor who performed surgeries in the front room, that a little girl named Sally had died there during a botched procedure. But she was sure what we were dealing with wasn't Sally, it was something inhuman. Something using the legend to hide, and it wanted me. That night I woke up in the basement. I had no memory of going down there. My hands were covered in dirt. I looked down and saw I'd been digging. A hole, about 2 feet wide, clawed into the concrete floor like I was trying to get out. Or worse, let something in. We moved out shortly after that. Deb was terrified. She'd started having panic attacks. Our son wouldn't sleep unless he was in our bed. And me? I was losing my mind. I'd catch glimpses of her, the little girl, in mirrors, in windows, just standing there with those dark, bottomless eyes. We didn't try to sell the place, we just left it, walked away, moved in with Deb's parents until we found somewhere new, somewhere safe. But the strangest part, after we left, the marks stopped, the voices stopped, the nightmares, they faded, the house didn't follow us. Whatever it was, it's still there, still waiting in that nursery. Still pretending. Some people who've visited since say they've seen her too, the little girl in the white dress. Others report the same things, claw marks, voices, strange cold spots, violent dreams. And yet the house remains. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if we'd stayed. Would it have taken me completely? Would I still be down there, digging? They say furniture can't be haunted, that spirits cling to places, not objects. It started with a bunk bed. My wife bought it second-hand in 1987 from a family down the road. Solid oak, good condition. We had 2 kids, Debbie and Kenny, and we figured it'd be perfect for their shared room. I remember putting it together one Saturday afternoon. The kids were excited, helping me line up the bolts, climbing up and down before I'd even tightened the frame. The first night, Debbie came running into our bedroom. She was crying, said she saw someone in the corner of her room watching her from the ceiling. I chalked it up to a nightmare. She was 8. Kids dream stuff up all the time. But it didn't stop. Every night, both kids would wake up screaming. They told us someone was whispering their names. My son started wetting the bed, even though he hadn't done that in years. They said a woman with black eyes would sit on the top bunk, legs swinging like she was waiting. We moved them into the guest room. The nightmares followed. We called in our pastor. He prayed, blessed the house, walked through each room with a Bible and holy water. That night was the worst. Around 3 o'clock in the morning we heard this noise, like wood splintering. I ran into the kids' room and the bunk bed was shaking. Not just rocking, a full violent tremble, like something was inside it, trying to rip its way out. My daughter was in the corner, screaming. My son was under the bed, frozen. We packed up and left the house that night. No plan, no bags. We just got in the car and drove. We ended up staying with my wife's mother for a few weeks. During that time I did some digging. I asked around about the family who'd owned the bunk bed before. No one seemed to know much, but one neighbor mentioned that the father died not long after they moved. Heart attack in his sleep. Same room, same bed. I went back to the house once just to grab clothes and a few tools. The minute I stepped on through the door, I felt it, like the air had weight. The lights flickered when I entered the kids' room. And the bunk bed, still there, looked wrong, like it was waiting for me. I smashed it with an axe. Piece by piece, I tore it apart, hauled it to the landfill myself. I didn't even want to burn it. I wanted it buried far away from anyone. After that, the house went quiet. Eventually, we moved back in. The kids slept in separate rooms. We never bought another bunk bed again. Sometimes I think it's over. Years later, my daughter told me she still has nightmares. About the woman with the black eyes, still swinging her legs from the top bunk, still waiting.
People always called us the silent twins, but they never understood the truth. That silence wasn't the absence of something, it was everything. My sister Jennifer and I were born together in April 1963, mirror images of each other, identical in appearance, speech, thoughts, even our breathing fell into rhythm. From the moment we could speak, we stopped speaking to the world. We only talked to each other. Fast, unintelligible whispers, our own language, our own reality. Our teachers thought we were mute. Our classmates thought we were cursed. But we weren't. We were private. We were complete. Until the silence between us turned into something else, something darker. We grew up in Wales, the only black children in a predominantly white town, bullied, mocked, marginalised. So we withdrew further, into our own bubble, into our own minds. We'd walk home from school without speaking a word. If one of us tripped, the other would fall. If I blinked, she blinked. If she stopped breathing, so did I. Our parents were kind, but, overwhelmed. They didn't know what to do with us. Honestly, no one did. As teenagers, we began writing fiction. Strange, obsessive stories about death, passion, and violence. We filled journals with our shared madness. In one, a doctor poisons a baby. In another, a boy lights his family on fire. The words poured out of us like confessions. Then came the crimes. Petty thefts, vandalism, arson, always together. We once set a building on fire and stood side by side, watching it burn. Eventually, we were caught. We were 19 when the court sentenced us to Broadmoor, a high-security psychiatric hospital typically meant for the criminally insane. That place, it changed us. The days in Broadmoor were grey and endless, surrounded by men who'd killed, women who saw demons. It should have terrified us. But nothing scared us more than each other. By then, our relationship had become toxic, parasitic. If I spoke to someone, Jennifer would sulk and starve herself. If she smiled, I'd cry. We loved each other fiercely, obsessively, but it was killing us. She began to say strange things, whispered in the dark, voice flat and calm. One of us has to die. I thought it was just her usual control, the strange power she held over me since birth. But she meant it. One day she sat me down in our room. Her eyes were blank, not angry, not scared. "June, I'm going to die so you can live." I laughed. I told her to shut up, but she just nodded and smiled. That night, she barely spoke. She stopped eating. Her eyes sank into her skull like she was slowly disappearing from the inside out. In March of 1993, after 12 years locked away, we were approved for transfer to a lower security facility. We were free. "It's time, I'm going now." I asked her what she meant, but she didn't answer. Her breathing slowed. Minutes later, she collapsed in my lap. By the time we arrived, she was dead. They called it sudden acute myocarditis. There were no signs of trauma, no overdose, no previous symptoms at all. Her heart, completely healthy, just stopped. It was almost like she'd willed herself to die. And me? I changed overnight. I spoke to the nurses. I smiled at strangers. The silence lifted, like a heavy curtain had been drawn back. It was like she had died so that I could be whole. People asked me if I was relieved. How could I be? She was my sister, my other half, the only person who had ever truly understood me. And yet, for the first time in my life, I was free. But it doesn't end there. You see, I still feel her. Sometimes, when I'm walking down the street, I'll see our reflection in a shop window. Both of us. I'll blink, and she'll be gone. Sometimes, I'll wake up in the middle of the night, gasping, and feel the weight of her lying beside me in bed, just like we used to. And other times, I hear her voice. Not in my head, in the room. She whispers to me when I'm writing. Words in our secret language, phrases I haven't used since we were children. I never answer. I'm afraid if I do, I'll vanish the same way she did. So I write, I talk, I live, for both of us, because silence is no longer safety. It's a grave.